Growing Up Weird.
Hi, and welcome to Growing Up Weird, the podcast where we explore how the earliest chapters of Western childhoods shape the health stories that we then carry into our adulthoods. Each week, we dig into the newest evidence, understand how it links together, and walk through some of the changes that we in the West could make to give kids decades of better health. Are you ready? Have you got a cup of tea? Good. We begin, as ever, with the news.
And the news is, headwind.
Such a headwind.
Windy. Okay. We live in a very flat part of the UK, and the wind comes whistling through and smashes into your face.
Greg, if these microphones are as good as you say they are, then actually all people are going to hear is us complaining with no reason for it at all.
We're actually in the studio just complaining. Anyway, Gwen, have you got any news today?
I do, Greg. Do you?
I do. How many newses have you?
I only have one.
Wicked, I have two.
Do you want to take the first?
I'll go first.
Great.
We'll go from there. My first is kind of a weird one for listeners of Growing Up Weird because it's not really news to us. Kind of news to everybody else. I include it here because A, it's recent and big in a big journal, and B, it's reassuring. Martina Vrijheid from the Institute for Global Health in Barcelona wrote a Nature comment article on exposome in children and its lifelong effect. For those who aren't familiar with the term, exposome is just the collection of stuff to what you are exposed when you're a very small child or an adult or whatever. The things you get exposed to, and that can be pollution or weather or microbes or abuse or whatever. And she brought together a number of studies on the scale of adulthood health impact and the age at which you are exposed to stuff.
Okay.
And as, you know, listeners and producers of Growing Up Weird, we might all assume the same thing, which is the earlier you get exposed to stuff, the bigger the adulthood impact. And lo and behold, these multiple studies all utterly and completely agree. Now, so that finding in itself is not news. What is news is that the Institute for Global Health in Barcelona and various other institutes for global health throughout Europe are all saying the same thing, which is, oh wow, this really, really matters. We are likely to get a bigger health improvement in older people if we interact before they are 3 years old. And
Great.
That is the absolute core of Growing Up Weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I include it, because if anybody ever listens to this and goes, I reckon these people are probably freaking out over nothing, please go and have a look at the May 4th paper in Nature. Actually, it's just straight up in Nature.
Okay.
By Martina Vrijheid. And the link will be in the description. Cool. That's all I wanted to add on that one.
I love
Gwen, what was
it.
yours?
I think I'm going to say just on that one. I remember when my first baby was born, and there was so much focus on like the first 2 hours and the first, few days.
Yeah.
And it's really funny to think as an adult, you're like, I've had so many days, I've had so many hours. How can these really very short periods of time in a lifetime make so much difference to a person's health? And I think there were some beautiful graphs in that paper that you sent me. That's what the graphs show really, really effectively, is that the thing is, if you change the course right at the beginning, you don't have to change it by very much to have massive effects on the rest of the life.
Yeah.
Whereas the sort of, the third and the fourth and the fifth chunks of time, they're never as important as the early ones.
All days are not created equal.
All days are not created equal. So yeah, cracking paper. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So my one this week is from Cell Reports Medicine. That is actually a journal. It sounds like it's the start of a really weird story, doesn't it? But Cell Reports Medicine from Darlene Day and others. And what they've been looking at is that socioeconomic status predicts loads of health outcomes. So, in effect, the more money you have, at least relative to everyone around you, the less likely you are to suffer from a bunch of different diseases. Fair enough, we all know that. What's interesting about this is that if you are a child in a family of low socioeconomic status, you have all these differences in how your body develops and your risk of different diseases. But socioeconomic status, that's not a biological thing, right?
Yeah, it's not like money itself actually interacts with your cells.
No, exactly. And so what these researchers have been doing is unpicking what are the biological mechanisms by which socioeconomic status links to health.
Right.
And they've done previous work before, but what they were looking at this time is around the effects of breastfeeding on the microbiome, because it looks like the microbiome is a really key translator of socioeconomic status into adulthood.
I was just about to say the exact same thing about breastfeeding.
Yeah, exactly. But there are a whole bunch of ways that we can think about that. If you are in a poorer family, you may well have less access to fresh food, less access to green space, higher risk of antibiotic exposure if you're in environments which are smoky or which are poorly ventilated. There are a whole load of reasons why you can see how having lower socioeconomic status could cause poor health.
Sure.
But actually, one of the really big ones appears to be the microbiome, and it seems to mediate a lot of the difference in health outcomes for later life.
Okay.
So what they said was they looked at 2 different cohort studies. So these are ones where you study a group of people throughout a long period in their life. They looked at one from Canada, one from Denmark.
Right.
And they looked at the parents before the child was born. They looked at the child at 1 year of age, and they looked at 5 years of age.
Yeah.
And they were looking at 4 particular risk factors for later life non-communicable diseases, which are, no surprises here, overweight and obesity,
Yep.
asthma, atopy, so that's eczema, and emotional and behavioural problems. Together,
Okay.
those 4 at age 5 are significant predictors for later life non-communicable disease.
Yeah, sure.
So what they found, this is really interesting, is that the more stable your microbiome is, and the kind of better it's sustained in very early life, the more resilient it is to all of those problems that we can throw at it. As I said about, your environment, your food, etc. And the thing that sets up that microbiome for really good stability is breastfeeding for 6 months. So if you are a parent in a low socioeconomic status family, you can, and you breastfeed your child, your risk of the risk of the child at age 5 having those non-communicable diseases is very similar to the risk if you were from a higher socioeconomic status, which is really interesting because it implies that there's always this difference when you're looking at the data on breastfeeding. You can see much bigger effects in people of lower socioeconomic status, and they were like, why is this? Why is it especially important for these groups? And it appears to be because those children are going to have a load of things coming at them that can disrupt their microbiome, but if they've been set up for stability in babyhood from breastfeeding, they are much less likely to be, their health is much less likely to be disrupted by them.
That's interesting.
I thought it was pretty cool.
I would love to see that cross-reference with the diversity of the microbiome in the parents.
So there's a really interesting piece. So the other thing they looked at in this study was around the presence of Bacillus infantis, which is a particular microbe that seems to have benefits, especially for asthma and overweight and obesity, which is much, much lower in our industrialised societies than it is in more traditional ones.
Hang on, Bacillus infantis or Bifidobacter infantis?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you. Bifidobacter.
I know my bacteria.
You do know your bacteria, thank you. Sorry, listeners. And what they found was that maternal, unsurprisingly, if your mother was breastfed, then the baby's much more likely to have this bacteria. If your father was breastfed, no effect. Unsurprising, because the bacteria present in breastfeeding go down the maternal line.
Sure.
And cleaning product use and postnatal smoking, just for topical relevance, given what we're talking about today, associated with much lower carriage of Bifidobacter infantis.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The smoking one's interesting.
Yeah.
Wonder what's going on there.
I don't know whether it's a toxic effect. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my piece of news that's actually news then, not just a pat on the back. Have you been paying any attention to the whole stronger, bigger muscles give you a stronger, healthier brain thing that's been happening over the last decade or so?
I mean, I haven't really paid so much attention to the brain part of it, but I know there's a lot of focus on muscle, mostly because most of us aren't really moving very much, so hey, muscle becomes a differentiator, right?
Sure, yeah. It's no longer a background effect, it's now those
you
people
have to
with
go
muscle.
after it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those people who have actively put in effort to get muscle are seeing differential health effects.
Okay, interesting.
And one of those is on the brain. There has been discovered since 2015 or so a strong link between how much muscle you've got and how much your brain can protect itself with age. There was a paper in 2018, one of the kind of key papers in this bit, by Frith and what's it with me in names today? Frith and Loprinzi, I think.
What were you saying about age and memory?
Yeah, well, I'm on my bike working on my leg muscles, and they said, look, leg muscle strength is very predictive of brain decline, to the point where people with stronger leg muscles, and they just divided people into stronger versus weaker,
Okay.
had a 34% reduction in brain decline with age. Reduction in cognitive decline with age.
Okay.
Which is pretty massive.
I mean, it sounds like a big number. I find it hard to think about like what that means on a graph, etc.
Yeah,
but okay,
true.
it sounds like a big number. All right,
Sounds like a big number, and it sounded like a big number that made that paper quite famous.
Right,
You will find
okay.
many YouTube videos, science press articles, etc.,
Okay.
based on that paper.
Right. Okay.
This is not a news piece about that paper.
Okay.
So for ages, people went, well, what's going on here then? Is it direct neural stimulation of the brain, or is it you need more brain to stimulate more muscle fibers, or what is it? And everybody went, nah, it's myokines. Familiar with myokines?
So those are hormones released by muscles, right? Which do good things or bad things.
Yeah,
presumably.
nearly all hormones.
Okay.
Some locally acting chemicals, but they are chemicals released by muscles when used.
Okay. All right.
So the amount of myokine that is released by a muscle is dependent on two things:
Okay.
how much muscle there is,
Yep.
and how hard you use it.
Okay. Yeah. That's makes
And
sense.
that hard, interestingly, is a combination of percentage activation and frequency.
Percentage activation, is that how
Many of the muscle fibers you recruit, so
right,
how
okay.
hard you're pushing
How hard
it.
you're pushing. All right.
And whether you do it once a day, or once a week, or once a
Okay.
month,
Yeah. All right.
or once a second. And loads of people went, well, it's something to do with myokines, let's not worry about it too much. And the reason I'm talking about it today is that a couple of weeks ago, a doctoral student in University of Umeå in Sweden,
Okay.
at the medical bit of the university,
Yeah.
said, no, this is not good enough. Anyway, they went through low intensity for a lot of the week, medium intensity for some of the week, very, very high intensity for a total of 16 minutes a week,
Okay.
2 8-minute sessions.
Right. Okay.
What do you reckon? At a guess.
For myokines.
Yeah.
Frequency of percentage activation. Okay. Well, I'm going to say you can do low intensity for much longer than you can do high intensity, so I'm going to put my money on low intensity.
It's a fair shout. A lot of people did. They were wrong.
Okay.
The high intensity showed the best effect. And it looks like there's a combination of hypertrophy effect, so supramaximal contraction and eccentric contraction leading to actual muscle growth,
Okay.
and percentage of muscle recruitment effect. That has
Fascinating.
that reflects on which myokines are likely to be having
Okay.
these cognitive sparing effects, and says, all right, if you're older, or if you're at all worried about your brain, work out like crazy, but you don't have to do it for very long per week. Now, finally, we come on to why I am talking about this on Growing Up Weird, which, as you know, is all about things you can do to small kids which will enable them to have better health when they're older.
Yeah.
What do you need to survive a high-intensity workout? You need strong bones, strong joints, great reflexes. You need to understand what your muscles and bones do when you ask them to move.
Yeah.
All of these, every single one of these, are things that you set up for success before the age of 6.
Fascinating.
Right?
Yeah.
If you want to be the sort of adult, or if you want your kids to be, or if you want your students to be, or if you want your patients to be, the sorts of adult that can pull this emergency switch and do a brain-saving workout, they have to be the sort of people who can survive the high-intensity workout. They have to be set up before the age of 6. There you go. All of which, in fact, quite neatly brings us on to laundry. So, Gwen, I've read the article. Everybody else, I recommend you read the article. But let us start with the hardest question. Why do we launder our clothes, Gwen? Why?
Great question, Greg. Well, we launder clothes primarily because we don't want them to look dirty, because looking dirty often means that we're judged by other people. However, there are certain occasions when we launder clothes to stop them smelling. Okay. I mean, you know,
again,
for
judged
adults,
by other people.
Often judged by other people.
Yeah.
We also launder them to reduce the presence of harmful things. So, for example, last week, when I had to clear up after my son had a vomiting bug, I was very glad that I had a washing machine to try and remove some of that toxic waste, should we say.
Understood. Okay, so we're talking about not just some ill-defined, other people don't look like us to look grimy thing, but we're talking about actual, well-proven in apes, monkeys, and humans. You have to be following societal rules to be treated by society as one of its members, and all the benefits that come along with that, such as help if you are not doing well, and support and all that. Mm-hmm. Well, laundering stuff is our entry fee to that. Yeah,
kind of. And I guess the step further than that is why we have clothes in the first place, which is to keep us warm.
Yeah.
But in general, we have a wipe clean surface, I think, as we described it in the article, which we like to cover with clothes either for temperature regulation or for social signalling as well. And if we are going to cover ourselves with those clothes, we do need to keep them fairly clean.
Because they don't have a nice sloughing outer layer.
They shed themselves.
They don't
shed. That's the problem with clothes.
My clothes shed themselves.
No, microplastics.
Okay.
But folks, microplastics not sufficient to clean your clothes.
That's not what I meant, but yeah, fair point. Okay, so first question then was why do we launder our clothes? Second question is how do we launder our clothes?
How do we launder our clothes? Well, when you and I lived in the Amazon and Africa, laundry was all done by hand. So the great big tub or the kind of stone sink, putting the water in, we smushed it backwards and forwards to get
folks, you're missing the hand actions here. The hand actions are great.
The water through the fibres. So part of laundry is literally washing away stuff that is caught in the fibres.
Yep.
Then we have certain things that have adhered onto the fibres. So then what we either need to do is leave them in the water for long enough for the water to dissolve them, or if they're things that don't dissolve in water, we use something called a surfactant, which most of us would know as a soap or a detergent.
So we're talking about suspension and solution of stuff that's on the clothes, preferably without dissolving the clothes themselves, which is why the clothes are made of the things we make them out of.
Yeah, and then for certain particular clothes or fabrics, they have other finishes and other things on that do things like killing microbes, for example.
Okay. So that's a very, very simple way to wash clothes. Put them in a solvent, normally water, mash them around, often with a stick, sometimes with your hands, and then add a surfactant to break down things that won't dissolve in water, normally food fats, food oils, that sort of thing.
And then rinse them again to remove the surfactant and everything you've got out.
Perfect. How then does that get modified and improved? And I say this well knowing the answer, having worked on it for a very long time. How does that get changed when we move from more traditional cultures into less traditional cultures, like the weird cultures. Those, for anybody who doesn't know the acronym, is Western, educated, industrialized, rich and democratic collection of cultures, North America, Western Europe, Australia, etc.
Well, we now have washing machines, and I
Yes,
have to
we
say,
do.
since coming back from travelling, I absolutely love my washing machine, Greg. It makes laundry so much easier.
Yep.
It means that we can wash clothes much more frequently, much more effectively, because a washing machine does all of the stuff that you do by hand, and then a huge amount more, because it can regulate temperatures. It can wash at temperatures that are,
that you can't wash your hands in.
You can use different soaps. You can use things that make the fabric softener, things that make the fabric brighter, and you can do them with absolutely no effort on your own part.
That's interesting. So as soon as you said it can do everything you can do by washing your hand, the contrary part of my brain was like, no, it can't. No, it can't. It can't look at where it's really soiled and concentrate on that area. But then you went through and you described all the other stuff, and I was like, it doesn't have to. It just washes absolutely everything as if it was
all a spot.
Absolutely covered in oil mixed with bits of mud mixed with, I don't know, spaghetti bolognese.
Yeah, absolutely. And the washing machine manufacturers, they really want to make sure that that however bad the wash that's gone in, it comes out sparkling, which means that the whole system is incentivized to make you do much more than you need to do for the vast majority of the clothes that you put in it.
That's interesting. Quick aside, and this is utterly pointless to anybody else listening. If your wash doesn't come out perfectly clean, how do you apportion the blame? Is it down to the detergent company, or is it down to the washing machine manufacturer?
Or is it down? I mean, again, this tells you a lot about myself. No, it's about me. I've overloaded the washing machine again.
Oh,
Greg.
interesting.
Oh no!
So you
just
internalize the blame.
Totally
and
internalize
I externalize the blame. If it comes out unperfectly clean, I'm like, damn you, Zanussi, and also P&G.
Oh, I mean, come on, Greg. I think this is a fundamental difference between the two of us.
Yeah, maybe true. I obviously am without fault ever. Okay, other than me being a psychopath narcissist, let's get back to the question in hand. We understand now the difference between washing with a washing machine and washing by hand, which is, one, you can do it a lot more frequently, and two, you can use things that you couldn't possibly use on your hands because they would trash your hands.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. I'm starting to see a difference here, which means the next question then is, what are the health effects of washing with a washing machine?
I think the majority of the health effects for a washing machine comes from the products that we put into it.
Okay.
As you said, they enable you to cope with much stronger surfactants than you could if you're washing by hand.
Yep.
And the problem with really strong surfactants and other chemicals that, again, you probably wouldn't be wanting to put on your hands is that they're not fully washed away by the washing machine.
What?
I know.
Surely there's a rinse cycle.
Yeah, absolutely there's a rinse cycle. But, I mean, I'm sure when you walk past people, you can often smell the laundry detergent and the fabric products they use, right?
And you wouldn't be able to smell it if it had been completely washed off. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi.
Morning. So yeah, absolutely. So when the products stay on your clothes, it means that your skin is then exposed to those products, especially if you sweat, especially on areas where the skin is thinner, like the inside of your elbows, the inside of your knees.
So hang on, go back to especially if you sweat. We're talking about transport of these things from the clothing matrix onto the skin because there's now a carrier, and that carrier is water.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Absolutely. And it's not just that the stuff that stays on the clothes goes onto your skin, but it also, I mean, as we talked about with fragrance, we know that it goes into the air from the clothes. And this is one of the reasons why it looks like children whose parents use use fragrance laundry products and certain types of detergent, the children are much more likely to have chronic wheezing, so have respiratory tract conditions as well.
So it's not just onto the skin. All right. So it's a second transit fluid. You've got the transit fluid of water, and then you've got the transit fluid of air.
Exactly.
Got it. And one you generally have, and one you sometimes have.
Yeah. And these are fairly short-term effects we're talking about. We're talking about chronic wheezing in toddlers. We're talking about dry skin, itchy elbows, itchy knees.
Are those short-term?
Well, the problem is that the damage that they are signalling can be much, much longer term.
For anybody who's not familiar with the barrier hypothesis of allergy, Would you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So the current best evidence theory for the development of allergy is called the epithelial barrier hypothesis. And what it talks about is it explains the development of allergy much like the development of immunity to a vaccine. If we want deliberately to make our children protected from an illness, we chop up that illness into, we take that illness, we put it in a syringe so we can put it past the skin. And very importantly, we mix it with little bits of bacteria, because those little bits of bacteria, if they go into the body, they make the body's immune system really, really worried. So
to be fair, that adjuvant isn't always chopped up bits of bacteria. You can use other things that irritate the immune system.
It can be.
But I'm with you.
But you can use chopped up bits of bacteria because they really stimulate the body's immune system. So in your vaccine, you've got something to take it across the skin, you've got the thing that you want an immune response against, and you have something to get the immune system going. And that is what appears to happen in allergy, only it's not deliberate. So how do we get something across the skin? We do it by putting strong surfactants, that's what I talked about, soaps and detergents, onto the skin to break down the fats and make holes in the barrier. We then have things that are on the skin that we might that can cross that barrier, things like pollen, things like cat saliva, things like potentially bits of food. And then the other thing that those soaps do is chop up the bacteria on the surface of the skin microbiome, so those go across as well. So in total, you have the allergen, the thing you'll become allergic to, the chopped up bacteria to make your body react, and holes in your barrier to let it get into your body in the first place.
A perfect vaccine against whatever was on your skin,
exactly.
Even if that's something completely harmless.
Exactly.
Okay. And I can see that the link then here to laundry detergent is you're using hardcore surfactants, which are very likely to do this sort of thing. And your symptoms that you would see would be reddened areas of skin, which is what happens if you break the barrier. And the barrier, for anybody who doesn't know, is mostly made of fats and oils, which, if you look on the outside of a packet of Ariel or whatever it is you use in your washing machine, it will say specifically breaks up fats and oils. Okay. And then your longer term symptoms would be, I'm now allergic to tree pollen or something.
Exactly, yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. Which brings us on to, I don't want that to happen. How do I prevent it?
So the best way to prevent all of these problems is to use as little laundry product as possible. That means judging the right amount of detergent. And I recognise this is hard. So the way that I think about it is if I have particularly dirty clothes, I might spot wash those clothes, or kind of put a little bit of soap, scrub them before they go into the washing machine. Use as little detergent as I can get away with, so I can assess it afterwards and say, is this clean? Do I need to use a little bit more next time?
How little is that?
I tend to use about a tablespoon.
Interesting. All right. So like versus manufacturer's recommendation of 10 tablespoons or 5.
Yeah, it's not. It depends on the product you use. Oh, that is a beautiful damselfly. Thank you.
So I'm just handing Gwen bugs here because
sharing that with me. So using as little detergent as you can get away with. For some clothes, if you want to just freshen them up, you can use a rinse cycle. You can use a very short wash. Not all clothes need to have the same amount of product. Avoid
is
using.
That where we get to the student favourite of a Febreze wash?
Yes, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of interest in how to increase the time between washing clothes. Also, because you want to protect the clothes, and washing machines, tumble dryers shred the clothes.
Yeah, fascinating. All right.
So water washing, using less detergent, not using fabric softeners. I didn't realise this, but fabric softeners they increase the residue on the clothes time after time after time, and you end up holding on to more surfactants. So using fabric softeners is associated with a higher risk of developing allergy.
I did not know that.
I know, I found that fascinating. If you're in a hard water area, again, the hard water puts residues on your clothes, which traps more surfactant, which is why children in hard water areas are more likely to have atopy and allergies than children in soft water areas.
Okay, so dropping them out into non-soluble salts because it's calcium in the water, not sodium. That's interesting.
Okay, yeah.
I hadn't thought of that either.
So reducing the, so you potentially using a softener, if you fabric softener, a water softener if you're in a very hard water area.
Yep.
And I think the really big thing you can do is just assess clothes. Do they actually need to be washed at this time? Is there any way that I can get away with just prolonging that time between washing?
Now, that brings us to what I thought was probably the most interesting bit of your article. Not that the rest was boring, the rest was fascinating, it's just that I already knew it. The bit I hadn't really thought about was, how do you motivate other members of the household to do that? Because it's not always up to the person running the laundry, which, let's be honest here, is pretty much always the mum. It's not always the mum's job to work out whether something gets washed. Very often it's just whatever's in the wash basket.
Yeah.
And it's individual choices then by the other members of the family what goes in the wash basket. Mm-hmm. So how do you motivate people to, like, I've seen kids, my own and others, take something out of a drawer, something else gets tangled out and goes on the floor, and they pick it up and put it in the wash basket instead of putting it back in the drawer. That's incredible.
Well, when I was away for a week in, I think it was November time, I got back and my daughter said, you've done. I'm not. No offense to you, but you've done almost all of the stuff that needs to be done. But I normally do laundry, and the laundry had accumulated.
Okay, yeah.
And my daughter said to me, "Oh, there's so much laundry to do, Mum. Well, for you to do, Mum." And I bit my tongue, and I said, "Oh, thank you. Gosh, what I've realised is that next time I'm away in about a month, I'm going to need someone who's able to do that, because Grace's been working flat out, and he hasn't managed to do the laundry." So for the next 3 weeks, you can join me for every single wash that we do. And she pulled a bit of a face, but she was like, she could clearly see it was very fair. She did apologise actually about a week later. She was like, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean I had to do all the washing. But because by that point she had been sorting out the washing, she'd been putting the washing machine, putting the laundry, putting the detergent on, getting it out, hanging it up, bringing it in, drying it up, making sure it was dry, putting it away. Mm-hmm. And once she'd done that 3 or 4 times a week, she was starting to get a lot more understanding. And what she started to do was go through the laundry basket and say, hang on, call my son over, look at this isn't dirty enough, you can wear that again. And she would start to sort. And it meant that she even policed what they were putting in. Are you sure that that's dirty enough to go in? Do you think that's, I think you can go and spot, can you just go and spot wash that? And so suddenly, by helping her be involved in the process, she realised how futile it was to wash really clean clothes. And so since then, actually, I was away for a week. She did all the washing, came back and said, you don't need to join me for all of it. But now, actually, she joins in for most of it anyway, because she knows how to do it, which is one of those very key aspects about helping children learn. Once they are skilled at doing something, it's much more motivating to do it. Yeah. But she also polices not only herself, but also her siblings.
I like that. Okay. So we're seeing mechanistic things you can change, amounts of detergent. And is there anything we need to know about types of detergent, bio versus non-bio?
It's a really good question. There's so little evidence on it, Greg. I went through, in the UK, we have this really big kind of polarization, bio containing enzymes, non-bio not containing enzymes. It's just not really a thing elsewhere. There are small associations in different directions, but the effects are actually really low. I think the
versus the effect of putting less in.
Yeah, exactly. It's a question of, is more surfactant better, or are the microbial proteases damaging in a different way? We don't know. There are not head-to-head studies. So I would just say use a small amount. Fine. What works for you.
Okay. Spot washing, you've mentioned. It's in the article. If you can't work out what it is from the phrase spot washing, go and read the article.
Yeah.
Even if you can, go and read the article. And there's a behavioural element here as well around motivation and learning, which is interesting and ties into this whole catch kids' obsessions when you see them. Mm-hmm. As soon as you see a child interested in something, jump on it, because that's when they'll be motivated to learn. And as soon as they've learned, it's easy.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Have we got a listener question?
Yeah, it's a really tough one today, Greg, so I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on it as well.
All right.
The question is it better to wash clothes frequently to remove contaminants like particulates, pesticides, etc.? Or is it better to not wash too frequently to reduce damage to the skin microbiome and barrier?
Ah, okay.
It's killer, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, can I take a stab at it?
Yeah, you take a stab, and then, I've got some thoughts.
Right. Oh, man. There's no way to answer this question other than on a case-by-case basis, as far as I can see it. Like, there are certain things that you want to wash off your skin as soon as possible. Similarly, there are plenty of things that'll be unable to get through your skin if you have an intact barrier. So, yeah, I guess my answer is, it depends, shrug emoji. If you know that you've got something on you that you really don't want on you, if you know that you've got, I don't know, a hormonal disruptor or something that will get in the way of your immune system on you, wash it off and probably wash your clothes. If you aren't sure, possibly give your barrier the benefit of the doubt. Oh, okay, there's the other thing, of course, which is your barrier doesn't just let things through without you knowing about it. You will see redness. You might feel itching if you're getting things through commonly or if your barrier is not in a great state. So that kind of pushes you in both directions as well, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Damn. Sorry, Gwen, the best I've got here is, I don't know, shrug. What you got?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I sort of think about, when I think about routes of exposure of these sort of chemicals, I tend to think, well, what are the vulnerable barriers here? And we've got the skin barrier, obviously.
Yep.
We've got the clothes barrier, so how much is crossing over the clothes in the first instance. But the really vulnerable surface is the lung barrier, because the skin is designed to trap things and shed them. Like, that's the whole function of the skin barrier. You've got multiple layers of defense and you get rid of all those cells frequently.
It's not the whole function of the skin barrier.
Okay, I know there are many functions of the skin barrier, but
it's at least 2/3.
from a defense perspective, it's extremely crucial.
Yeah, fair.
So it's, and sloughs those cells off.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that you're completely protected by any stretch of the imagination. We know there are things that cross the skin barrier.
Yeah.
But it is at least a surface that is designed to remove things, unlike the lung. So then you go on to, okay, what is important to protect about the lung? Well, it still pushes you in both directions, because things that become airborne off clothes, especially if they're around the head and neck, yes, it's maybe worth washing those off, providing that you're not also damaging the lung, which makes it in a state that it's more easy to become injured by whatever you inhale. I think there's another piece about the extent of your surface that is exposed.
Yeah.
But I don't have a good answer to this either. But what I would say is that if your children are exposed to things where you think these are particularly unpleasant, as you said, wash, get them off the clothes.
Sure.
But at a general level, we should start to be much more selective about things that can cause us harm and need to be removed, versus things that are dirty or like visibly dirty but not harmful, where we don't want to compromise in order to remove those.
And we get back to the work clothes argument.
Absolutely.
Which, you know, for two people cycling along past a building site, I reckon it's probably quite a good place to leave it.
Absolutely. I remember, the only thing that I particularly remember was working on products for companies that wanted to reduce skin damage from air pollution, and we just couldn't find any good evidence to suggest that air pollution is particularly damaging to skin. We know that it's really damaging to lungs, and so we were a bit like, we don't think that this is a particularly, from a science perspective, a particularly fruitful place to look.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Fascinating.
So yeah, sorry listener, we can't come down on a completely hard and fast rule, because the science isn't there and the questions haven't been asked. So yeah, folks, that's it. You've been listening to me, Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
And me, Dr. Greg Dickens.
That's all from us. Bye. Bye.